Thank you for joining us for the Secure Connections podcast, brought to you by IoTSSA, the Internet of Things Security Services Association. As always, I'm Brian Sherman, host of the series and content director for Get Channeled and IoTSSA. And joining me for today's episode is Stephan Tallent, Senior Director of MSSP at Fortinet. Stephan, welcome back to the Secure Connections podcast.
Thanks, Brian. Good to be here.
Awesome. Well, first off, I noticed this week that CRN Magazine just included you in its 100 People You Don't Know But Should list for 2018. So congratulations. That's quite an honor.
Well, thank you much.
Cool. And glad you could join us today, too. So first off, we spent a few minutes discussing your early career in IT and entry into the realm of cybersecurity on our last podcast, but I failed to mention that you're a certified information systems security professional, otherwise known as Cissp. Can you provide a little background on what it takes to achieve that status for those who may be unfamiliar with the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've held a number of vendor certifications from Cisco, NetScreen, Juniper, Fortinet. The CISSP, though, has been really one of the best investments in my educational career outside of college. Of course, you get something out of that too. But really, what preparing for the CISSP was actually fairly rigorous because there's a lot of content. It's around 8 primary cybersecurity domains. And you can either do it the hard way, which is study with books and practice tests for 6 months, or you can do it kind of the easy way, which is dedicate a week to a class and really focus your efforts on that. I was balancing a day job at the time, so I studied nights and weekends and ended up passing the exam the first go around. So I was pretty fortunate from that perspective, but it's definitely an exam it's a lot of content, hours and hours in exam time. So you got to really be prepared for that kind of rigorous endeavor there. But well worth it though.
Does it give you a pretty comprehensive foundation in the security principles?
Yeah, absolutely. It hits pretty much everything that you need to know from a topical perspective so that you can organize, whatever you're doing after the certification, you can organize your thoughts and actions around the 8 domains. So, security and risk management, asset security, security architecture, communications and network security, identity access management, security operations, the security into development and software, assessment. So you basically capture all of the primary, areas of influence within a cybersecurity operations center.
Very good. Excellent information. But based on your experience, is that certification something that MSPs should consider adding to their training and their business bucket list, I like to say, especially with the importance of cybersecurity today?
Well, I think it's especially helpful for MSPs that are adding an S, for security in their business. We see a lot of that where they're, the partner is a managed services provider and, doing IT as a service or whatnot, and wanting to move into security at the request of their customers or with a desire to move into the opportunity in the market space. But if you're looking to add credibility in your security practice, having someone in a leadership role carry that CISSP certification is critical. It's perceived as being vendor agnostic. It is vendor agnostic. It's a leadership certification, and it gives the member a broad understanding of security, and it also illustrates an investment in security knowledge. So I think what you've seen as a result of the quality of that certification and then the impactfulness on actual operations, it's globally recognized, but here in the U.S., it's a baseline certification for the DoD, NSA. It's accredited under ISO standards. So easily the most respected security certification you can get. So I would say, especially for those MSPs moving towards security, having their people get certed up on this is a good investment.
Great. I know certifications are extremely important, especially when it comes to differentiating your MSP or MSSP business as well. So that's great. I definitely appreciate the feedback on that. We get a lot of questions about that. Is it a valuable tool for the channel, and what it's about? So I appreciate the background on that. So let's shift gears and switch to discussing something that I wanted to talk about today, which Many refer to it as Industry 4.0 or the Fourth Industrial Revolution. How is this next phase of automation affecting MSPs and MSSPs, and how do you expect this industry transformation to change their roles in the coming years?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it really is. It's a head scratcher for a lot of companies that have been in the IT services industry for a lot of years, right? When you look at the last three industrial revolutions, you got the first one, mechanization, where we're starting to use machines to do stuff. Two was mass production, and three was computer and automation. Now we're in four, and it's the cyber physical bond that is happening that really is changing the way we do things. So it creates opportunities as well as vulnerabilities. And some partners, are onto it that I talk to. So, I have the pleasure of supporting, hundreds of the top MSSPs in the nation. And some of them get it, and they're reaching deeper into their customer networks to secure these vulnerabilities. But some partners are still trying to figure out their play here. It's not, readily apparent how you take advantage of the opportunity and capitalize on it for a services interest. Because you go to RSA and you walk around and everybody's an IoT expert using automation and artificial intelligence. Everybody's doing it. How do you pick, the right, solution set for what you're trying to do? But the fact of the matter is, projections of the MSSP market growth for IoT, it's expected to get to 11 billion by 2021. And surveys of top CISOs say 80% of them are say that IoT is going to be impactful to their business, but only 22% of those CISOs are actually evaluating risk before deploying IoT. So as an MSSP guy, this smells like opportunity to me, because you kind of after the fact, it's like, holy smokes, we've got what in our network, and bring in the experts to secure that for us. So I think it's a great opportunity for MSSPs. And MSSPs or MSPs and MSSPs to get into the game and capitalize on securing that environment.
You think with the complexity of and the intricacy, there's so much as far as especially artificial intelligence, IoT. It's a lot of moving parts. Do you see more specialization and partnering taking place in the future?
A lot of the MSSP partners that we're dealing with want to be that one throat to choke, if you will, or the single source for the security requirements for their end customer. But we do see specialization in different aspects of the very complex components to providing this security, specifically SIM. Security information and event management isn't rocket science, it's brain surgery. So being good at that, we are seeing some specialization around that, where partners will do just that, and they'll work with other partners to provide a fully functional security information and event management reporting capability to an MSSP that's focused specifically at managing security assets and providing the pen testing and the threat intelligence resources and things like that. So we do see some specialization in there, and there's a larger partner community developing that allow smaller partners and partners that are focused in certain areas of security to be able to leverage other partners that have a channel program to do different aspects and fill gaps within their services portfolio. We're supporting an initiative called the Services Marketplace that's going to be launched soon. That'll be an environment just for that. It's an ecosystem of partners that are able to work together. They're partners in good standing with Fortinet, so they're certified up and they're knowledgeable, and they also play fair and have channel programs that help other partners get into different aspects of the business without running the risk or worrying about having their customers taken from them.
Makes sense. It reminds me, thinking back more than a decade, the early days of managed services, where master agents were pretty predominant, helping people get into that next level of managed services. Those that didn't have all the capabilities. It seems like with the fourth industrial revolution here, as we move to IoT and others, security is kind of doing the same thing. There are security master agents per se. Infogress is probably a very good example in the IoTSSA community that will help those that may not have all those capabilities put together a very good or a comprehensive suite of services. So there's not a question there with that for you, but I'm just noting that we've seen a big transformation over the years, and it's very similar to the early days of managed services. But Let me switch.
You look at, that's a great point. I'll tie off on that just really quickly. You look at the one primary factor is there's 0% unemployment rate in cybersecurity engineers. And, God bless them, but there's no shortage of salespeople, right? So most companies have a lot of salespeople or the ability to gain salespeople, and they have stronger sales capabilities than they do engineering capabilities for obvious reasons. You may turn to a partner that has, deep engineering resources. Infogressive is a great example, UDT, Secure Retail. There's tons of those kind of partners that we work with that do just that. They provide the engineering expertise for organizations that may be more sales heavy.
So true.
Good point. I'm glad you noticed that trend.
So true. And speaking, you brought up IoT earlier. That is obviously one of the hottest topics in the future technology discussion, up there with AI and AR. Gartner predicts that the Internet of Things endpoints will grow at a 32% growth rate through 2021, which is phenomenal when you think about technology growth. Anything over 10 is great, but reaching an installed base of over 25 billion units within just a matter of like 3 years. That's a lot of technology capturing a lot of information with few, if any, standards in place right now. So what vulnerabilities will that expose?
Well, that's a loaded question, right? So the challenge that IoT represents really boils down to a couple of things, and the threat intelligence guys are probably just like going on talent and answer this one correctly. But so the concept of having a headless device that doesn't have any ability to have any security installed on it, that's obviously a challenge. So there's nothing that you can do to secure the particular device on board. Where the stuff is made is a big question mark, right? There was just a recent article I listened to this morning that was talking about how motherboards made by Supermicro had been embedded with chipsets that were, phoning home to Shenzhen or, to the PLA. So you don't know where things are made. They're being deposited into environments without security. And as a result of that, they're open to you name it, denial of service attacks, ransomware, botnet recruitment. You have the potential to create a massive global botnet army that businesses are not aware that these devices are running in their networks. They appreciate all the benefits. I mean, look at the benefits and the use case scenarios for IoT. You can see why businesses are doing it. They're not just running headlong into risk. They're looking at, spot market energy settlements, being able to calculate stored value and loyalty against, their customer base, pay as you go, stocking and inventory, micro payments for utilities, automated prescription. These are all things that are benefits to what IoT technologies bring to businesses. And these represent trillions of dollars in savings for businesses. So that's why they're moving toward this IoT, type of environment, but they're doing so without really calculating the risk that they're putting themselves into. Give you a quick example. A denial of service attack. One of the largest universities in the nation actually had its IoT devices, were breached, and those devices were used to create an internal denial of service condition that then was followed with a ransomware request. So if you imagine the scenario of having, in this university had some 15,000 IoT devices on the campus, those devices were compromised and used basically to go search for seafood all at the same time. Why seafood? Who knows? But these devices then go out to the internet. They create a bunch of sessions looking for seafood and brought the network to its knees. And the bad guys basically said, "Hey, you want your network back? Give us the ransom." And so that's what's facing businesses as they look forward to these technologies being incorporated in. Another concept. Think about ransoming a human being, right? So you basically breach the elevator IoT systems and industrial control systems, and basically lock people in an elevator and say, "Hey, we're not going to let them out until you pay the ransom." So it really is an enormously challenging security situation facing businesses that are incorporating this technology into their networks.
So the possibilities could be very interesting with what they do with these technologies in the future. And you were, mentioning some large applications, but as you and I both know, the channel's focus is a lot of times in the SMB space. So what challenges do you think they will face with IoT and the infrastructure and all of those vulnerabilities?
Well, I think that the awareness of what resides in their network. You go to a small business, and even the small businesses could have hundreds of devices in their network that are doing different IoT things. They just don't know. And there really have been a few tools on the market that really would allow you to discover devices that don't show up as traditional security assets, right? So SIM has been around since dirt. But that is designed to show you information coming off of security assets within your network. And then you get into, different network tools like Nagios, Cacti, and the like, SolarWinds and whatnot. And those are designed to look at other things on the network, but very few tools are designed to identify IoT devices, give you a kind of a vector on who the manufacturer is and what kind of communications it's having. I mean, that's just not something that has been readily available on the market. As more businesses have incorporated these technologies into their network. So I'd say, controlling and securing headless devices is not a problem that is singular to an enterprise. I think it's an SMB problem as well. The thing that I think is a salient point here is that SMBs, they oftentimes, I was in the business, focusing on SMB customers, and they would always say, "Oh, nobody's coming after me. Nobody wants to break into my network."
Sure.
The fact of the matter today is that they are the soft spot for a larger target. So basically, the hackers are not going after them; they're going after their customers and partners. So once you're able to jump off of a poorly defended SMB into their customer base, then you start to get to larger targets that are of substantial worth, and that's why there's a big focus at those SMBs by the bad guys today.
Well, and you brought up an excellent point there too. I don't know if you saw yesterday's directive from the Department of Homeland Security, basically warning that MSPs and cloud providers are at risk with extra risk right now because of the target that they present.
Well, yeah, think about it. I mean, who would you go after if you were the PLA or the Russians? You'd go after the companies that are managing the security for hundreds of thousands of customers. So yeah, it makes sense. Little harder targets would be what you would think, but sometimes that's not the case. And our MSSP partners also need to be thinking about how they're securing things. Granted, they have chosen for the most part the best security technology in the world today, of course, so they're ahead of the game. But absolutely, I would be thinking that way if I was the bad guys for sure.
Yeah, we've actually been discussing that in quite a few of the forums at IoTSSA for the last, I'd say, 3 months, and even in the live events, we've done a pen test demo showing even the best protected partners. It's very easy to find a way in, and so it's kind of good to see that the federal government is heightening the alert level so that everybody's paying attention to that. Just like increasing the awareness of security risk for the SMB, as we talked about before, is many of them don't think that they're a great target, but the reality is they're probably the best target because they have the least amount of resources right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
So I see IoT similar to the cloud in one respect, is that there's a number of ways to offer planning, design, implementation, and support opportunities for the channel. What do you see, Stephen, are some of the complementary services MSPs and MSSPs could or should be offering when it comes to IoT and IoT security?
Well, I think there's an enormous number of opportunities. Like the cloud. I mean, I think your parallel to the cloud is a good one because it's uncaptured opportunity that exists here. Really, it's not something that you're going to be as a service provider. You're not going to be running into a huge amount of competition in this space yet, because it's still really crystallizing into the types of security that needs to be applied into those environments. So for one, I think discovery, vulnerability assessment, IoT device discovery and classification would be a service in and of itself. IoT device security control, so being actually able to do something down at the switch layer with devices that are connected to the network, is providing the actual kinetic security, and then automating responses, because you're dealing with thousands and thousands of IoT devices. I mean, every time somebody walks in with their phone and gets on your Wi-Fi network, or walks in with an iPad into your network, they're adding IoT to your environment to a certain extent, right? So it's not just the devices that are operating in your network to do certain things, but it's the fact that there's additional devices that are constantly coming onto the network, and being able to see something, know it's bad, and do something about it in an automated way allows an MSSP to provide a high quality service, but not have a huge operational overhead tied to it. So I think the three things that I would be focusing on if I was a partner getting into this space is device discovery and classification, device security control capability, and then automated, the ability to incorporate automated responses to improve, vulnerability response times and mitigate attacks and really see things before they turn into a big problem. And that's oftentimes not the case. Most businesses that are breached in a majorly impactful way, they didn't notice the breach happened until it was too late, and basically created a larger problem because they weren't able to capture something early in its early phases of the kill chain.
Great information. So with that explosive endpoint growth that you talked about, what is Fortinet doing to help MSPs and MSSPs ensure their client systems are properly protected?
Yeah, so great question. Basically, we created the Security Fabric Alliance program a couple years back, and that was a partnership that we had created to share telemetry and threat intelligence information with focused partners that helped round out sort of an MSSP's feature set and capabilities. And what one of the companies that we aligned ourselves with was Bradford Networks, and we did a lot of development effort with them to provide automated responses and threat intelligence sharing. We actually acquired Bradford Networks because we were so impressed with the capabilities and their interoperability with our security stack. And that's really what we're leading with for the IoT play today, because it provides a designed specific capability to identify, classify, and secure IoT and mobile devices. You look at sort of the NAC. I always say, SIM's been around since dirt. Well, NAC's been around since dirt, right? So the concept of network access control, 1.0 was like safe user onboarding, being able to restrict and understand who's getting onto the network. Well, you had NAC 2.0, which is the BYOD thing, and devices added onto the network. Well, NAC 3.0 is IoT. And that is its own beast, and requires technology that gives you an ability to understand all these devices. I mean, if you look at the device list of some of the discoveries, these are just manufacturer names you've never heard of, but you know where they come from, and you realize, holy smokes, I have all of these devices made by these manufacturers. I have no idea where they were, how they were made, what the standards were for what they were made. I mean, being able to classify that stuff is a critical component that very few vendors actually offer. So being able to tie, say a Supermicro board set to a vulnerability, that's not what a capability that a lot of technologies have today in this space. You may see the devices, the IP address, the MAC address, and all that, and be able to go, okay, well, that's a new device. I didn't know that was there. Well, being able to see who the manufacturer is, what rev of code is running, what kind of operating system it has. I think those are critical components to being able to go in and actually secure those environments.
So, Stephen, I assume you're talking about the Fortinet, and if so, is that just for IoT management? Can you go in a little depth on is there complementary?
No, yeah. So basically, it's enforcement closer to the mobile devices and IoT devices down to the port level. So, you're looking at school systems with, student laptops plugging into the network at least, ensuring they have a certain level of security when they're connected, quarantining devices, applying, indicators of compromise to mobile devices, and being able to do, different aspects of IoT management within one platform that talks to the firewalls, the switches, and the APs. That really is, basically tying in threat intelligence around IoT devices to the security fabric and our ability to communicate with this technology between the firewalls, the switches, and the APs. And when you have that level of interoperability and collaboration internally, you can stop things quickly by leveraging the other, kinetic enforcement points within the network. And in our scenario, our switches and APs act as enforcement, for the firewall, and Fortinet speaks to all of those technologies and has an ability to mitigate breaches before they really start to propagate the network. So I think it's an important component to our strategy, our security fabric strategy, and it's not just the small businesses. I mean, it's SCADA networks, it's ICS networks, it's healthcare. It applies in so many different scenarios today because there's so many of these devices out there that are kind of operating in a cloud of mystery. So I think it's a great opportunity for partners to get into the game.
Does that help a lot, being the fact that there are minimal standards in many of the industries right now around IoT, that type of fabric approach?
Yeah, it does, because you really you don't know where the devices are going to be in your network, and you don't know if it's a flat network, how quickly things can propagate inside of a flat network. So being able to discover and classify those devices is a critical component. And Fortinet basically is, an industry leading solution for that requirement.
Very good. And obviously we're talking about, the opportunity for MSPs and MSSPs. So what type of visibility does the system provide for your partners?
So it gives a partner an ability to discover and classify all the devices in a network, all of them, right? So endpoints, IoT devices, users, applications, and it's, multi-vendor wired and wireless connectivity identification, right? So it just gives you a ton of information on the devices that are in the network, and it gives the partner an ability to plan what they're going to do about it. And it gives them also an opportunity to report to their customers on what they've discovered and the actions that need to be taken. And obviously, as an MSSP, you illustrate what you're going to do before you do it. But being able to illustrate it with real data on the risk facing that customer gives you a much better opportunity to not only provide the services, but preserve your margins within the services, because you're adding a lot of value. It's not just, hey, I'm going to come in and charge you a monthly fee to manage your firewall anymore. It's like, hey, I'm going to come in and give you a risk assessment of your environment and give you an ability to understand what's going on in your network and understand the actual risk you face, as opposed to me sending you, a dark reading report on how IoT is owning people. I'm going to actually show you what's in your network and give you an understanding of your true risk state. So I think it creates an opportunity for partners to do a lot more for their customers around this particular requirement.
Makes sense. So IoT is, we talk about, there's always margin in the mystery, and IoT is really one of those technical mysteries, much like, cybersecurity, managed services. MSPs may need to leverage reporting to keep their clients in the know, at the right level of know. There's too much information, not enough information. How does Fortinet help its partners provide their customers with that right mix of fundamental performance information?
I tell you, one of the things when I was in the MSSP business myself, we used to get spanked by this one particular competitor, and we were just baffled, like, man, we got beat by those guys again on this one opportunity, and the next opportunity we'd lose to them again, and we were trying to figure out, we knew we were awesome, but this partner was out there, really beating our pants off, right? So what we figured out though is they were doing a ton of reporting. So they provided a really cool customized report capability, and they used that in their sales phases to illustrate what they'd be providing in an ongoing basis. And that ended up winning the day for the end customer. So reporting obviously is critical from a managed security service provider perspective. And basically the combination of Fortinet and FortiSIEM together give the partner an ability to provide advanced customizable reports. So you're not just talking about changing the color of the thing and putting your logo on it. We're talking about, hey, you have a PCI requirement, or you have a HIPAA requirement, or a NIST requirement. We're going to put together tailored reports that illustrate how you're checking important boxes for that, and giving the CISOs and the IT security, professionals at the customer the kind of information they need to report up the food chain as to why they're spending this money on an MSSP, as opposed to bringing something in house that may be under consideration. So being able to offer that ability to really highly customize those reports and give a great deal of detail and put it into an executive format that is legible to someone that's not got a propeller on their head, I think is a critical capability that we offer our partners.
Yeah, that's a hard balance to find sometimes, especially when it comes to more complicated technologies and planning and sales and all of the different steps that need to be taken. Whether it's a QBR or the initial sales conversation, is finding the right mix of detail to share with a client or prospective client. So that's great information. So unfortunately, our clock is ticking down on today's Secure Connections podcast. So I want to leave. What final thoughts would you like to leave with our audience today, Stephan?
Well, I'll tell you, IoT is a threat and an opportunity. It's a threat to your customers' networks, and it's an opportunity for you to secure it. So from a security, services perspective, it creates an enormous opportunity to get out there and evolve your managed services offering. If you're already a managed security service provider today, an ability for you to update your services portfolio and attack a new market segment. If you're a managed service provider today and you're doing IT as a service, it's a natural fit for what you're doing today. But it gives you an even stronger level of value. And as you look at doing that kind of work, you should be assessing the vendors that you're selecting to ensure that the technologies they're espousing and the ones that you incorporate into your security operations are talking to each other. Threat intelligence is critically important to your success as a service provider. And if that threat intelligence is not permeating across your security infrastructure and the stuff that you're deploying for your customers, then it's going to be real hard for you to manage and real hard for you to ensure that you're securing your customer environment. So I would just make sure that we're capitalizing on threat intelligence and we're leveraging technologies that communicate and collaborate in securing your customer networks so that you can go out there and deliver a high margin, high quality service to your customer base.
Well, that's an excellent point to leave on. And on behalf of IoTSSA, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, Stephan. And I'd like to thank the listeners for staying tuned and encourage all of you to check out all the great channel-exclusive cybersecurity content on the association's website. It's IoTSSA.com. Thank you again, and have a phenomenal day.
Thanks, Brian.